Look, I want to talk to you real quick about spirituality and food. And this is going to be a brief video because I know as Americans, we are overstimulated. Our ADHD is off the chain. So, real quickly, spirituality and food. The first real mention of food in the Bible that I pick up is in Genesis. And in Genesis, early on, Adam and Eve are told they have the seed-bearing plants for both food and beauty. That tells me a couple things. Beauty is important. It tells me food is important. It tells me food is a beautiful thing because it's associated with beauty there. And it tells me that food ought to build beautiful temples in a way because I can infer that based on the food being beautiful. Usually if you fill yourself with something that's intended to grow you and that something is beautiful, I wouldn't expect something disgusting to come out of it. So the word beautiful means more than physically aesthetic here. I think that's what's important. So then we go on to talk about food. God says that it would be okay for us to eat animals. But then we get to the Levitican laws. After that, the fall, the sin and everything. And Leviticus is recommending that essentially we don't eat animals. Or that we don't eat certain animals. So I look at this like, interestingly enough, I was watching Dr. Neil Barnard from the Barnard Institute, and he's an advocate for ethical medical practice and for animal rights and things like that, and he's an advocate for veganism. And I was wondering, why would our food be important to us that we don't eat animals? And it's like our teeth, right? We have a certain number of teeth. He was talking about the dental record, and it's like I'm looking at our teeth as these flat things that look like they're made to mash up veggies and fruits and things like that, soft things. And we don't have a lot of tearing teeth like a fox would have, for instance, or a wolf for like ripping apart meat. But we do have a couple of canines. So that tells me, yeah, we are historically omnivores. Maybe we should eat a little bit of meat, but we only have the two canines, so most of our food ought to be plants based on the dental records. Then I look at the Bible. Based on the Bible, we were originally intended as perfect people to eat plants. And plant and animal cells are different in biology, so there's a difference between plant and animal. And we called it all life because of certain criteria, but maybe they're different types of life. And then I think that commands in the Bible, the absolutes versus the you can do it, but it'll lead to bad things physically, but not necessarily spiritually because you're already saved. Those two types of sin seem a little bit different to me. And I would say that based on, we have basically absolute things that we live by, and then other things that aren't, that we just kind of go basically by vote of our good outcomes versus bad outcomes that we believe would happen. And I think it's the same thing, like God kind of has absolute things in the Bible and then relative commands that are recommendations, but there are exceptions to them sometimes in extreme situations and things like that. So I think it's almost like a committee versus a absolute dictator sort of thing. Like a committee votes on a thing based on data of in and out, whether yes or no, like binary, and then the absolutes go beyond binary because I hope that makes sense to somebody. But that's why I think food is so important. It's symbolic of what we take in because it's the thing that we physically take in the most and have the most senses activated by while we're taking it in. We have the taste and the touch and everything. And I think that's why something very emotional like intercourse is so important. That's something stimulating all of our senses. We take it in, it's like boom. Other things, they stimulate senses but maybe not as heightened, and I think the dopamine release and things like that is our brain's way of responding to heightened things. And if we get too many heightened things, then we start rejecting them. So I think like Americans, we're hooking ourselves up to all these machines and constantly stimulating our senses. We have the phones on us all day, and it's leading to this thing where less and less things actually stimulate us physically. So I was thinking the end game would be that people become so obsessed with physical stimulation, which is happening, and getting more and more and more of it, that, we're trying to just stimulate our senses constantly because we feel miserable when we don't. We go through withdrawal. So it's a disease in and of itself, right? I think it's a state of dis-ease, and that's not good. So that's what I think about food and spirituality. Hope that's a good start.